What happens when the world's most powerful leaders meet in a quiet mountain town in Canada? War, AI, climate change, and trade battles all in one place. Welcome to the 2025 G7 Summit in Canada, and welcome back to English Story Journey, where we learn real English through real stories. Today's video is not just news, it's a chance to grow your vocabulary, improve your listening, and understand how the world works in English. So grab your notebook, stay curious, and let's dive into this global event. Let's begin. What to know about the 2025 G7 Summit in Canada? Canada is hosting some of the world's most powerful leaders at a time of major global uncertainty, from war in Europe and the Middle East to economic pressure and the reshaping of global alliances under President Trump's return to power. The Group of Seven, G7, composed of Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United States, is meeting June 15th to 17th, 2025 in Kananaskis, a scenic resort area in the Canadian Rockies, Alberta. It is the first G7 summit hosted under Prime Minister Mark Carney, who holds this year's presidency. Why this summit matters. The 2025 G7 summit takes place in a world marked by deep political, economic, and technological disruption. 1. Geopolitical crises. The Russia-Ukraine war continues, and Western unity over long-term support is weakening. Tensions in the Middle East, especially between Israel and Iran, are escalating, challenging U.S. and European diplomacy. Instability in Africa has raised alarms over migration and regional security. 2. New global leadership. The summit welcomes new G7 leaders: Keir Starmer, UK, Friedrich Merz, Germany, and Shigeru Ishiba, Japan. Donald Trump, now in his second term as U.S. president, is reshaping America's stance toward allies and institutions, raising concerns about multilateral cooperation. 3. Economic and trade pressures. Post-pandemic inflation, global debt, and disrupted supply chains continue to strain national economies. Trump's reimposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico have jeopardized North American trade ties. 4. AI and technology regulation. Rapid growth in artificial intelligence and surveillance technologies has outpaced regulation. G7 leaders aim to agree on ethical frameworks. 5. Climate and energy goals. G7 nations face mounting pressure to meet climate commitments, especially from youth movements and developing countries demanding real funding and action. 6. A divided world order. The divide between democratic and authoritarian states is growing. The G7 is reaching out to leaders from India, Brazil, South Africa, Mexico, Australia, South Korea, and Ukraine to strengthen ties with the global South. Who's attending? In addition to the 7 G7 countries and the European Union, several global partners have been invited. In Narendra Modi, India; Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Brazil; Cyril Ramaphosa, South Africa; Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico; Anthony Albanese, Australia; Lee Jae-myung, South Korea; Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine; Mark Rutte, NATO's new Secretary General. This expanded guest list reflects the G7's effort to address global challenges beyond the Western sphere. What are the key issues? 1. Global economy. On Monday, leaders will focus on the fragile global economy, addressing inflation, recession risks, and trade tensions, particularly Trump's tariffs that have disrupted U.S. relations with its neighbors and allies. 2. Ukraine. Tuesday's agenda includes direct talks with Zelensky and NATO's Mark Rutte. The U.S. is pressuring Europe to take greater responsibility for military support to Ukraine as American domestic support weakens. 3. Middle East tensions. The leaders may attempt to craft a joint position on the Israel-Iran conflict, though divisions within the G7 make consensus uncertain. 4. Wildfires and climate disasters. With wildfires currently burning near Alberta, climate resilience and emergency cooperation are urgent topics. 5. AI and global tech governance. The G7 aims to advance AI safety principles and propose shared frameworks to prevent misuse of emerging technologies. 6. Migration and regional security. Drug and migrant smuggling, particularly in the Americas and Mediterranean, remain on the agenda, as do calls for long-term development partnerships with African nations. Will any agreements be reached? While past summits have led to major decisions, such as sanctions against Russia, expectations for consensus are low this year. Canadian officials have already indicated there will be no traditional joint communiqué, due to deep divisions over trade, defense, and diplomacy. Bilateral and small group meetings may still yield announcements on AI cooperation or targeted economic measures. One major focus will be whether G7 leaders can agree on a unified response to the Ukraine war or the crisis in the Middle East. The Trump factor. President Trump's return to the G7 has introduced tension and unpredictability. He has criticized Canada's trade policies, threatened to withdraw from key agreements, and even suggested making Canada the 51st U.S. state. Remarks that have outraged many Canadians. A one-on-one meeting between Trump and Carney is set for Monday to address trade conflicts and the breakdown of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, public response and security. Canadian authorities expect protests in Calgary and Banff, both near Kananaskis. Security has been tightened, and local communities are bracing for demonstrations over war, trade, and environmental issues. What to watch? Will the G7 issue a joint message on Ukraine or Gaza? Can economic cooperation survive Trump's renewed protectionism? Will the G7 find common ground on AI and climate? Or will the Global South have a real voice or just a seat? It will be important to watch whether leaders can make a coordinated statement about the war in the Middle East or in Ukraine. If not, it will be a stark reminder of just how far apart America is moving from its traditional allies on the most important issues of the day. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and learned something new, don't forget to give it a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. Bye for now.